In this tutorial, I'll show you how you can create a shadow catcher with reflections in EEVEE. So the first thing to do then is go into the shader editor and go into the world tab down here and then add a HDRI background with these two nodes, background node and a HDRI image. So what we need to do next is add a plane. This will be the shadow catcher. So scale that right up and then apply the scale. And then we need to add a sun, or any light, but I'll add a sun, and then just raise that up a bit. And you'll see we are getting a shadow now on the ground, but it's quite soft, and that's because this HDRI background is adding to the diffuse lighting. And all we want to do is show up in the background and also affect the reflections. So to do that, we'll add a light path, and then we'll add a in fact, before we do that, we'll add a mix shader and plug that in there, and then plug the camera ray into the factor of that. So what that means is the HDRI is visible to the camera, but it's not visible to any of the other rays like the shadow ray, diffuse, glossy, etc. So that makes the shadow stronger because it's not affecting the lighting. We also wanted to affect the reflections though. So if we if we duplicate this one, and then we'll use a mix RGB and change that to add, and then we'll plug the camera ray into the top, and we want the glossy to be affected as well, so plug that into the bottom, and then plug that into the factor instead. Then you get in the reflection of the HDRI, and you get it in the background, but it's not affecting the diffuse, so that shadow staying nice and dark. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is add a material to the shadow catcher, the plane. So if we go into the object mode, we'll add a new material, just delete the principled, and what we'll do is we'll add a diffuse. And then what that's going to do is give us the shadows only, no reflections or anything. But we want to use that shadow as a mask for the transparency. So if we add a shader to RGB, this will mean that we can then use the output of this in a factor of a mix shader. So just add a ramp as well, just so we've got a bit more control over the size of the shadow. Okay, and then we'll add a mix shader and then plug that in there. We'll plug that into the factor, and we want the black areas, so the shadow, to be a diffuse set to black. Plug that into the top, and then we want the non-black areas to be transparent, so we use a transparent shader and then plug that into the bottom. And then we need to, for it to work, go into the material tab on the right hand side and change under the settings the blend mode to alpha blend, and then you'll see you're getting the transparency, and you're also getting the shadow caused by this diffuse. And you'll notice that the edges, the HDRI is darkened where the plane is, and what we can do to fix that is go into your sun settings and then just turn the strength up until it matches the background, so around about there. Okay, and we can also make those shadows soft. Go into the shadow setting of the rendering settings and then just change soft shadows and high bit depth, and then also in the sun settings you can change the softness in there like that. Okay, so you've got the shadows and the transparency. So to get the reflection, in fact what I'll do is I'll just put a frame around those and then grab all of these and put those inside the frame. There we are. So I'll just name that to shadow catcher, or just shadows rather. And now what we need to do is mix that in with reflection. So if we add another mix shader and plug that in to that, and then what we'll do is we're going to plug the reflections into the bottom. So we'll add a glossy shader and then plug that in to there and just change the roughness down. And to get the reflections, what we'll need to do, we'll add a reflection plane and then scale that up to match the plane, and then just move that up until the reflection becomes visible, right about there, and then we're getting proper reflections. So back in here, just change the factor of the mix shader. Will control the mix between the shadows and the reflection, so you can have it all reflection, all shadow. So I'll just add a little bit of reflection there. And the problem is, if you look at the edges of the object, it's reflecting all the way beyond where we want it, and then having an effect on the sort of brightness of the HDRI background. So to fix that, we need to create a mask on the plane to control where the reflections can show, and we'll do that by adding another mix shader. And we'll plug the glossy, so we'll plug that in instead into the bottom, and then we'll plug the glossy into the top, and then we'll also plug the transparency, or we'll copy that transparency down here. In fact, not sure how you copy it back out of there, so just add another one. And then we'll plug that one into the bottom. And now we need to control where on this plane it's showing the glossy and where it's showing the transparency. So to do that, we'll add a Fresnel and then add a ramp. Plug that in there, and then plug this into the factor. And I'll just solo this by holding Control Shift and then clicking on the color ramp so we can see what's happening. The black areas are going to show, let me just, if I change the position here, we can control based on the camera angle where's black and where's white, and we want it to be quite harsh, something like that, so that at the edges it's not going to show any reflection, it's only going to show transparency, like that. So if I bring that down, as I move that, you can see the reflection is moving, and if I bring that in, it's becoming more harsh. So you probably want a bit of a fall off, maybe something like that. But the important thing is that the edges of the plane aren't visible. The reflection slowly turns to transparency, and then all you do is reconnect this. So Control Shift left click on there, and then you've got your shadows back from this section, and then you're also getting the glossy mixed with transparency from this area. And then you can zoom around and the reflection won't affect beyond the edges, well, beyond where you want. So you can, let's say for example I bring it to about here, zoom out, you can see you are getting the edge around there, and if I wanted to change that now so you don't get that harsh edge, all I'd need to do is go into here and then just move that the sliders on the colour ramp that's connected to the Fresnel until it disappears, and then you're still getting the reflection and the shadow without affecting the colour of the background. And that's it basically, so hopefully that's helpful for somebody. Like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below if you'd like any particular tutorials making, or if you've got any ideas for improvements, because I'm quite new at doing tutorials. But anyway, enjoy, and thanks for watching.